fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
The expectant hum of nascent starlight vibrated in my bones. It was the cosmic equivalent of a held breath, a universe waiting to exhale a gift. 16 million years, a milestone even for one of my kind, the star-forged. My existence had been a languid drift through incandescent nebulas and silent, diamond-dusted voids. I'd painted constellations onto the black canvas of new galaxies and spun moons from cosmic dust for my own amusement. For my 16-millionth birthday, tradition dictated a rite of passage far grander than any I had yet experienced. My own planet, a Genesis-class world ripe for shaping. A blank slate upon which I could sculpt life, raise mountains like sleeping gods, and pour oceans of liquid sapphire. My parents, vast and shimmering entities whose true forms could buckle the fabric of spacetime, appeared before me as elegant pillars of coalesced light. Their voices were the chime of colliding asteroids and the whisper of solar winds. Our dearest Elara, their chorus resonated, not in my ears, but directly within my essence. A milestone of ages deserves a gift of equal measure, a world to call your own, a place to anchor your power. A shimmering portal, a tear in reality, opened beside them. It did not show the vibrant blues and greens I had fantasized about. There was no swirl of pristine white clouds or the glint of sun on a virgin sea. The view was sludge. A miasma of greasy brown and sickly yellow choked the sphere on the other side. "What is this?" I asked, my voice a fragile crystal in the face of their booming harmony. "It is your becoming," they replied, their tone infuriatingly serene. "It is Ethel." They gently nudged my astral form forward. The moment I crossed the threshold, the portal snapped shut behind me, severing my connection to the clean, sterile cosmos. The air hit me like a physical blow. It was thick, acrid, tasting of chemical fires and wet decay. I choked, my form flickering as it struggled to process the sheer toxicity. My bare feet, usually accustomed to walking on solidified light, sank into something soft and foul-smelling. I looked down, gray, nutrient-starved soil, littered with the rusting husks of some primitive technology. The sky was a perpetual, suffocating twilight, the sun a pale, diseased-looking disk behind a shroud of pollution. A slow, greasy rain began to fall, and where it touched my skin, it sizzled with a faint, acidic bite. This wasn't a Genesis world, this was a tomb. A Type 0 civilization had risen, industrialized, and then choked to death on its own progress. This wasn't a gift, it was an insult, a cosmic joke, a garbage heap at the forgotten edge of a dying galaxy. Rage, a hot and unfamiliar emotion, coiled in my gut. My parents had given me a broken toy, a derelict project, a punishment. Why had I displeased them? Was my art not grand enough, my creations not perfect enough? I wouldn't stand for it. I was Elara. I had sung stars into existence. I would not be anchored to this rot. I gathered the energy within me, focusing on the familiar pathways of translocation, preparing to tear my own way back to the celestial currents. I reached for the power that was my birthright, the ability to fold space and step between worlds. Nothing happened. I tried again, pushing harder, pulling on the threads of the cosmos. A dull, heavy chain seemed to wrap around my essence, yanking me back. I felt it then, a deep, metaphysical anchor burrowing from my core down into the planet's blighted heart. They had bound me to it. I was a prisoner. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my anger. The acidic rain fell harder, plastering my silver hair to my skull. The air grew thicker, making my lungs burn. My own starlight began to dim, my form becoming more solid, more vulnerable, more mortal. From the swirling chemical fog ahead, two shapes emerged. They were tall, broad, wrapped in patched hides and scavenged armor plating. They moved with the predatory grace of survivors, their faces obscured by crude rebreather masks. They were natives, descendants of the fools who had murdered this world. One of them carried a long, vicious-looking blade fashioned from sharpened scrap metal. He raised it, its edge catching the bleak light. His voice, distorted and harsh through his mask, cut through the hiss of the rain. "Look what the poison sky coughed up, Reese," he growled, the sound low and dangerous. "Another sky curse come to watch us die." My power sputtered like a dying candle in a hurricane. The celestial energy that was as natural to me as breathing felt thin and weak, choked by the planet's toxic atmosphere. I, who had swum in the hearts of stars, felt a chill seep into my bones from the acidic rain. Vulnerable. The concept was so alien it was paralyzing. "I am no curse," I said, my voice wavering with the effort of projecting it. I tried to pull myself up to my full, intimidating height, but my body felt heavy, leaden. This place was given to me. The second figure, Reese, pushed back his hood. His face was leaner than I expected, all sharp angles and intelligent, wary eyes that were the color of storm clouds. His mask hung around his neck, revealing a grim, set mouth. He was studying me, not with the brute aggression of his companion, but with a keen, analytical gaze that was somehow more unnerving. "Given to you," Reese's voice was smoother, a low baritone that still held the ragged edge of hardship. "Like a scrap of meat is given to a carrion bird, this world is a graveyard. Nothing is given here. It is only taken." The larger man, the one who had spoken first, took a menacing step forward. I could see his eyes now through the grimy visor of his mask, chips of obsidian filled with a deep, bottomless resentment. "We know your kind, Starchild. You drift down from your clean heavens, watch us suffer, and then drift away again when the spectacle grows boring. You're parasites." "Kale, wait," Reese murmured, placing a restraining hand on his companion's arm. Kale shrugged it off, but he didn't advance further. "My name is Elara," I stated, forcing a regal tone I didn't feel, "and I did not ask to be here. I am trapped." Reese's eyebrow arched. "Trapped, a being like you." He gestured to my faintly luminous skin, the starlight woven into my hair. "You seem more like the cage than the captive." Before I could retort, the sky ripped open. The greasy drizzle became a torrential downpour. The rain hissed as it hit the ground, and the air grew thick with a sharp, vinegary stench that made my eyes water. "Acid flux," Kale snarled, grabbing Reese's arm. "We have to move, now." He glanced at me, his contempt warring with a primal instinct for survival. With a guttural curse, he lunged, his hand clamping around my upper arm like a vice. His touch was rough, calloused, but shockingly warm against my cooling skin. He dragged me along with them, away from the open ground and toward a collapsed structure that looked like the skeletal remains of a great building. We scrambled inside, finding shelter under a massive, slanted slab of ferrocrete. The storm raged outside, the acid rain drumming a frantic, corrosive rhythm on our refuge. The three of us were crammed into the tight space, the proximity suffocating. Kale's simmering hostility was a palpable heat on one side, Reese's unnerving scrutiny a cool pressure on the other. I was wedged between them, a celestial being huddled in the dirt with two mortals who despised me. To distract myself from the claustrophobia and the stench of wet leather and unwashed bodies, I focused on the wall of our makeshift cave. It wasn't rock, it was petrified material, dark and fibrous, a fossil, the cross-section of some enormous, ancient plant. Driven by an impulse I didn't understand, I reached out and pressed my palm against its rough surface. I closed my eyes, trying to feel something, anything, beyond the planet's oppressive sickness. I let a tiny, desperate trickle of my innate energy flow from my hand into the dead material. It was a futile gesture, a silent lament for the green and living world this must have once been. A soft gasp came from my left, my eyes snapped open. Where my hand rested against the fossilized wood, a faint, ethereal filigree of emerald light pulsed, tracing the long-dead vascular tissue within. It was weak, fleeting, but it was unmistakably the light of life, my life, echoing in the heart of death. Kale stared, his jaw slack beneath his mask, but it was Reese's expression that stole the breath from my lungs. The analytical curiosity in his eyes had been replaced by a terrifying, rapacious hunger. It wasn't lust, and it wasn't greed for power. It was the desperate, all-consuming need of a man dying of thirst who had just seen a single drop of water condense in the desert air. He looked from the fading green glow back to my face, and a slow, chilling smile spread across his lips. "Kale," he whispered, his voice dangerously soft. "She's not a curse to watch us die. She's a key. She's the cure." The word cure hung in the cramped space, more potent and dangerous than the acid storm raging outside. It shifted everything. I was no longer an object of contempt or a passing spectacle. I was a resource, a tool, and judging by the feral hope gleaming in Reese's eyes, I was one they would not let go. "Don't be a fool, Reese," Kale growled, though his own gaze kept darting from my face to the spot on the wall where the light had faded. It was a trick of the light, a starchild's glamour. "Did that feel like a trick?" Reese countered, his voice sharp with intensity. He never took his eyes off me. I felt it, a whisper of what this world once was. She poured life into stone. He turned his full attention to me, his expression a fearsome blend of supplication and demand. "You can do it again. You can cleanse the soil. You can bring back the green." The sheer impossibility of the request was staggering. I was one being, and my power, which felt so limitless in the void, was being actively suppressed by this planet's poisoned aura. What I had just done, that tiny flicker of life, had felt like trying to fill an ocean with a thimble. It had left me feeling hollowed out and weak. "You don't understand," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "This world, it's fighting me. It's too sick, too far gone. What you ask is, it would destroy me." "And without you, we are already destroyed," Reese retorted, his logic as sharp and merciless as broken glass. "You are trapped here. We are trapped here. It seems our fates are intertwined, whether you like it or not." He offered a proposition that felt more like a threat. Help us heal Ethel, and we will help you survive it. We will be your guards, your guides. We will teach you how to breathe this air and walk this blighted land. We offer a bargain." Kale remained silent, his arms crossed over his massive chest. He was the muscle, but Reese was clearly the mind, the strategist, and I was their sudden, unexpected gambit. My desire to leave, to return to my pristine reality, was a burning ache, but the anchor held fast. Escape was impossible. Survival, however, was not guaranteed. The acid rain was proof of that. "Where," I finally asked, the word tasting like defeat, "where would you have me start?" A grim smile touched Reese's lips. The heart would. The storm eventually subsided, leaving the world dripping and steaming. They led me through the skeletal ruins of a dead city, across plains of gray dust, to the base of what I first thought was a small mountain. It was the petrified stump of a tree, so colossal it defied imagination. Its broken top was lost in the smog layer above. This was the heartwood. "It was the mother tree," Kale said, his voice softer now, tinged with a reverence that surprised me. "All life on Ethel sprang from its roots. Our ancestors believed its lifeblood was the planet's own. We believe if you can wake the heartwood, even for a moment, its pulse will resonate through the soil," Reese explained, pointing to a dark, gnarled section near the base. "There, pour your power into its heart." I approached the petrified trunk, the scale of it making me feel small and ephemeral for the first time in my very long life. I placed both palms on the cold, rough surface. Kale stood a few paces back, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, his posture that of a wary protector. Reese watched from the side, his expression unreadable. I closed my eyes and drew upon my core. I bypassed the sputtering, weakened energy near my surface and reached deep, pulling on the very essence of my being, the ancient, raw starlight from which I was forged. I funneled it into my hands, pushing it into the dead, unyielding stone. It was agony. It felt like shoving my arms into a furnace filled with grinding sand. The planet's blight fought back, a crushing, negative force that sought to devour my light. My vision swam. I felt the planet's pain, not as an outside observer, but as a shared trauma, eons of slow poisoning, of gasping for breath, of life withering into dust. It was a symphony of despair, and I was now a part of it. In my haze of pain, I could feel the presence of the two men. Kale's was a solid, grounding weight, a silent bastion against the storm I was battling. Reese's was a sharp, focused point of desperate hope, a beacon and a demand all at once. For a fleeting second, I didn't feel like their prisoner. I felt connected to them, to this place. But the strain was too much, the blight was too strong. The starlight within me began to gutter violently. My physical form flickered, threatening to dissolve. A cry of pain was torn from my lips as my strength shattered. My legs gave way, and I pitched forward into darkness. As consciousness fled, I saw Kale surging forward, his usual scowl wiped away by a mask of raw alarm. His strong arms caught me before I hit the ground. The last thing I felt before the blackness took me completely was the solid, warm shock of his touch, but it wasn't just warmth. Deep within my fading essence, something ancient and dormant stirred, a note of resonance, a chord of impossible familiarity, a feeling not just of being caught, but of being found. I awoke to the smell of smoke and roasted roots. The world came back into focus slowly, painted in the flickering orange light of a small, controlled fire. I was lying on a bed of salvaged furs in the same sheltered ruin where we'd hidden from the acid storm. My body ached with a profound, soul-deep exhaustion I had never known. I felt scoured out, hollowed. Reese was tending the fire, his sharp profile softened by the dancing flames. Kale was sitting with his back against the far wall, his formidable weapon resting across his knees. He wasn't looking at me, but I could feel the weight of his attention. The air between us was different. The raw hostility had been burned away, leaving a tense, fragile truce in its ashes. "The feeling," I murmured, my voice raspy. "When you caught me, Kale, I felt something." Kale's head snapped up, his dark eyes locking onto mine. He looked startled, almost spooked, a crack in his hardened warrior facade. He grunted and looked away, a muscle feathering in his jaw. It was Reese who answered, his voice low. There are old stories, so old they are mostly forgotten, tales from before the blight when the sky was blue. He poked the fire with a stick, sending a shower of sparks into the gloom. They speak of a triad, a balance, the sky soul, the earth heart, and the mind blade. It was said that when the world fell sick, the three would be bound together to either heal it or watch it die. He glanced from me to Kale and then back again. It was a children's story. A myth to give hope in the dark. A sky soul, an earth heart, and a mind blade, me, Kale, and Reese. The notion was absurd, a primitive fantasy. And yet the resonance I had felt from Kale's touch, that shocking sense of rightness, of recognition, echoed the sentiment of the myth. I looked at Kale again. His entire body was rigid, as if he felt the same pull and was fighting it with every fiber of his being. He was the earth heart, I realized, grounded, strong, rooted in this broken land. And Reese, the strategist, the one with the plan, was the mind blade. Did it work? I asked, changing the subject, needing to ground myself in reality. The heart would. Kale was the one who moved first. He pushed himself to his feet and came to my side, offering a calloused hand. His touch sent another one of those strange, resonant jolts through my system. I took it, allowing him to help me to my feet. I was unsteady, and his grip was a solid, grounding anchor in my exhaustion. Reese rose silently and led the way back out into the gray twilight. We returned to the base of the colossal, petrified tree, to the exact spot where I had collapsed. And there, emerging from a crack in the stone-dead bark where my hand had rested, was a single, perfect leaf. It wasn't large, no bigger than my palm, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It was a vibrant, impossible green, so rich and full of life it seemed to weep color into the gray world around it. A soft, internal luminescence pulsed from its veins, a faint echo of the starlight I had poured into it. It was new, it was pure, it was hope made tangible. I reached out a trembling hand. Kale came to stand beside me, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. His usual aggressive posture was replaced with a quiet awe. Reese stood on my other side, his expression one of grim satisfaction. We were the myth made real, the celestial power, the steadfast earth, the keen mind. The task ahead was still monumental, a single leaf in a world of decay. Healing this planet would demand every last drop of my power and their every ounce of strength and knowledge. But as I looked from the glowing leaf to the man standing so close beside me, I finally understood. My parents hadn't given me a punishment, they had given me a purpose. And as I saw the impossible hope reflected in Kale's guarded dark eyes, I realized they had also given me something infinitely more terrifying and precious. A reason to stay, a reason to fight. The slow burn of Ethel's rebirth had just begun, and it was inextricably tied to the reluctant, dangerous heat igniting between its sky soul and its earth heart.